Hello and welcome to URM's webinar, ISO 27001 2022, What's New? My name's Lisa Dargan, I'm a director here at URM, and I'm joined by Wayne Armstrong, one of URM's senior consultants. So let me just run briefly through the agenda in terms of what we're going to be covering today. Key things we're going to look at is the key changes to the standard, including the merged and updated controls. We're going to take a look through the management system clause updates and talk about the significance of those. We're going to look at some of the new controls, all the new controls, and the principal challenges around implementing them. I'm going to focus a little bit around risk assessment and particularly the impact of threat intelligence on risk assessment. Look at how you get the most out of the new standard, particularly the attributes and how that can benefit you. For those of you that may already be certified, we're going to just very briefly touch on transitioning from the 2013 version to the 2022 versions. And finally, we'll address any questions. If you do have any questions, please do pop them in the chat. There's a question bar. Please do pop them in the chat as we go along. If we can answer them quickly, we will do. If not, we'll address as many as we can at the end. Very briefly, for those of you who aren't familiar with URM, URM has been established for well over 15 years, and right from back in the days of 7799, we've been focusing on 27001. We've taken more than 300 plus organisations through certification within the last 3 to 4 years, so we really do understand 27001, and we have a very passionate team of people who've worked both as consultants, but very importantly from this perspective as information security managers, CISOs, compliance managers managing ISMSs. One of those is Wayne, so let me introduce you briefly to Wayne. He's certainly very passionate and has been involved in 27001 and information security since 2001. Wayne has led more certifications than any other individual within the organisation and has been with us for over 10 years. So Wayne was head of information security and is now, as we've said, a senior consultant. Wayne's a lead implementer and a lead auditor for 27001, as well as a PCI DSS QSA and a risk specialist, and equally a trainer. Wayne, I'm going to kick off by saying there's probably nothing you don't know about 27001, and we're very fortunate to have you with us as you've been heavily involved in looking at the new standard, changes to the new standard, but most importantly, boiling that down to what does that really mean. So Wayne, can we start with what are the key changes to the standard? What's the headlines and what should we really be aware of?
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. I think to start off with, it's probably worthwhile mentioning a couple of the really high level changes, or one of the really high level changes associated with the standard, and that is the title change. So it's been changed to include a couple of key terms or phrases, if you like, so cybersecurity and privacy protection. One of the things I wanted to point out here, though, is that there's been very few changes to 27001 itself, and I will go through those. The main changes are around 27002. And one of the things I want to mention is that those changes are not fundamental enough, and even the addition of the new controls, they're not comprehensive enough for you to be able to claim compliance with things like GDPR and other privacy related legislation, etc. So what I don't want you to take away from this is that if I implement 27001, I'm going to be automatically compliant with GDPR. That's not going to be the case. There will be other things that you need to do. There is an additional standard that you could look at, which is called ISO 27701, which augments 27001. So you need both in order to become certified to it. But that does add in a lot of data protection considerations. So any of you that are looking for data protection or protection of personal data, maybe consider 27701 at the same time. In terms of organizations that are already certified to 27001, there is a transition period that we learned about just recently. That means that since the date of release, which is October 2022, you've got 3 years effectively to transition, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we go through through more of the slides. Just bear with me a second. In terms of getting a little bit deeper into some of those changes, the main management system remains largely the same. There are some changes that have been made though, and I will go over those in a couple of slides' time. They're not really fundamental at first glance, but they might mean that you need to do more work than you think you do. So I'll mention a couple of those specifically later on. In terms of Annex A, obviously it now reflects or references the 2022 version of ISO 27002, which came out in April last year. The sort of high level overview of that is that there are now 93 controls in that standard rather than the 114, but don't let that fool you, because the reduction in the number of controls has mainly come about because some of the